The night shift on the orbital relay station was usually so quiet that I had started talking to the coffee machine. It didn't answer, but at least it didn't complain about my maintenance reports either. I was halfway through explaining to it why instant noodles should count as a balanced diet when every alarm in the station suddenly began screaming like it had discovered the end of the universe. "Great!" I muttered, staring at the flashing monitors. Either the galaxy is collapsing or someone forgot their parking brake in orbit. A small object had just punched through the upper atmosphere and landed somewhere in the desert valley below the station. The sensors insisted it was a capsule. The scanners insisted it wasn't built by humans. Naturally, that meant it was my problem. 20 minutes later, I stood in front of a smoking escape pod half buried in the sand. The metal surface shimmered with unfamiliar symbols that my translation tablet politely labeled as definitely not Earth technology. The hatch hissed open. Inside was a young woman. She looked human at first glance. Same eyes, same expression of absolute irritation. But then she sat up and the moonlight revealed the difference. Her ears were long, elegant, and curved slightly backward like delicate antennae. She stared at me. I stared at her. She spoke first in a language my translator refused to process. Judging by her tone, however, I was fairly confident she had just insulted my entire species. "Good evening to you too," I said. She climbed out of the pod with surprising grace, glanced around the empty desert, then looked back at me like a disappointed queen examining a very unimpressive servant. More alien words followed. My tablet finally beeped. Translation, partial. Statement likely meaning, "Where is the Royal Escort Fleet?" I looked around the desert again. "Currently stuck in traffic," I said. "Galaxy's a mess this time of year." She narrowed her eyes. Then the pod behind her beeped again, projecting a small holographic emblem into the air. My translator processed it this time. Imperial crest detected. Royal lineage confirmed. I blinked. Then I read the next line on the screen. Subject identified, daughter of the alien queen. I looked at her. She looked at me. She crossed her arms and said something else. The translator buzzed again. Translation, human. You will return me immediately. I sighed. "Well," I said, "this is going to be a long night." I brought the alien princess to the station, mostly because leaving a royal extraterrestrial in the desert seemed like the kind of mistake that ends with an angry fleet appearing in orbit. She stepped inside, looked around the small control room, and tilted her head. Then she said something in her language. My translator blinked for a moment. Translation, "Is this a storage closet?" "It's a highly advanced orbital relay station," I said. She slowly turned in a circle, examining the metal walls, the old terminals, and the coffee machine that occasionally made noises like it was thinking about retirement. Translation update, primitive, but charming. I decided to take that as a compliment. She walked to the main console and stared at the screens like someone examining cave paintings. Her long ears twitched slightly as she studied the blinking radar. "What are you doing?" I asked. She pressed one button. The entire station dimmed. She pressed another. 3 alarms began screaming. "Please stop pressing things." She pressed a third button. The station lights turned purple. She looked satisfied. Translation, "Your technology is very emotional." I rushed to the console and started reversing whatever diplomatic disaster she had just created. "Please," I said, "do not start a war before breakfast." She leaned over the console again and studied the star map. When she spoke, her tone was calmer. The translator processed it slowly. "My people will come soon." I nodded. "That's the plan." She looked at the screen again, then glanced at the small kitchen corner. A moment later, she picked up a cup of instant noodles. She inspected it like a scientist discovering an ancient artifact. Translation, "This is food." "Yes." She sniffed it carefully. Then she tasted one noodle. Her ears twitched. She stared at the cup. Then she looked at me with complete disbelief. Translation, "Your species survived evolution with this?" "Barely," I said. She suddenly laughed. Not politely, not like royalty. It was the kind of laugh someone has when they realize the universe is far stranger than they expected. A few minutes later, the long-range sensor beeped quietly. I checked the monitor. A signal had just been transmitted from the escape pod. Destination: deep space. Estimated receiver: unknown alien fleet. Estimated arrival time: very soon. I leaned back in the chair. Well, I said, your ride is officially on the way. She looked out through the station window at the stars. Then she said something softly. The translator processed it. Good. But she didn't sound completely happy. The station sensors began screaming again the next morning, which was impressive because they had barely stopped since yesterday. I looked at the main screen and almost spilled my coffee. A fleet had appeared. Not a small fleet. Not a polite diplomatic cruiser. An enormous formation of alien ships hovered near Earth's orbit like a floating city that had decided the solar system looked interesting. I slowly turned toward the princess. Good news, I said. Your ride is here. She stood beside the window, watching the stars where the fleet glowed like a cluster of artificial suns. Her ears moved slightly as she listened to the station's communications panel. A signal came through. The translator activated immediately. Royal Command Vessel requesting the return of Her Highness. Another signal followed. Additional message. The Queen herself is present. I rubbed my face. Of course she is. Minutes later, a beam of light formed inside the station. Several armored alien guards appeared. Tall, silent, and clearly unimpressed by my maintenance uniform. One of them spoke. The translator worked again. Human, you will return the princess now. I stepped aside. No problem. I've been trying to do that since yesterday. The princess didn't move. The guards waited. She crossed her arms. Then she said something firmly. The translator hesitated before speaking. No. All the guards froze. Another voice suddenly echoed through the station. Calm. Powerful. The Queen. Daughter. Explain yourself. The princess glanced at me, then at the small station around her. She spoke slowly. For the first time in my life, no one bowed. No one watched every word I spoke. I ate strange food and laughed at ridiculous machines. She pointed at the coffee machine. Somehow I was happy. I raised a finger. In fairness, the coffee machine is emotionally unstable. No one translated that. The Queen remained silent for a long moment. Then her voice returned. You choose to remain here. The princess nodded. The guards looked like someone had just deleted their entire training manual. Finally, the Queen spoke again. Very well. The Empire will observe this world more closely. The light vanished. The guards disappeared. Outside, the massive fleet slowly turned and began leaving the solar system. The station became quiet again. I looked at the princess. So what now? She smiled slightly. Your machine still owes me another cup of that terrible drink. I sighed and walked toward the kitchen. 2 days ago, I was a lonely technician arguing with a coffee machine.